Awesome. Well, thank you
Hello,
all for
everyone.
thank you all for joining us. This is the MAPS holiday call. Our topic today is maximize your profit in 2024. So if you were expecting a different call, you're in the wrong room. And you're still welcome to stay here. I promise we won't kick you out. Um, so happy Monday, and we're gonna go ahead and dive right in. I see we've got quite a few of you here, some familiar faces. And so yeah, in case you don't know who I am and you don't know who my amazing co-host is, um, my name is Herb Catania. I am a MAPS leadership coach. Been coaching for about 8 years. Prior to that, I was an MCA out of the Fresno, California Market Center. Shout out to Fresno. Um, and Jenny, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yes, so I am a MAPS leadership coach. Also been coaching for about 8 years. I am the Colorado Regional MCA. Also work with KWRI for MC support. I've been with Keller Williams 13 years, and I love every minute of it. And we appreciate you all for joining us today, wherever you're at on your journey. Um, and we're excited to bring you ways to increase and maximize your profit in 2024. This
That's
is
right.
100% interactive. We'll ask that you stay on mute unless you want to come in and have a conversation with us. We're going to encourage you to use the chat and interact as much as possible. This is a conversation designed to help and benefit you. So thanks for coming on the journey with us.
Yeah. All right. Let's dive in. So our goal today is that you walk out of here with no less than 5 action items. And we've got some action items that we're going to go through in our slides here and talk about in just a minute. And spoiler alert, there's going to be more than 5. So you now know ahead of time if there's going to be more than 5 that we talk about. And yet what's important is that by the end of this call, you choose your 5, right? And so be prepared to take notes, write down anything that jumps out at you. And at the end of it, we'll hear from some of you, all of your action items that you've got that you're going to go ahead and implement right away. Because what we know is that if you take immediate action within 24 hours, you are much more likely to achieve your goal. So, with that being said, we're going to start off. Every good holiday call starts with a pop quiz, right? Everybody knows this, right? And so in Keller Williams, there's 3 factors that impact profit. Who can put that in the chat or come off mute? What are the 3 factors that impact profit in let's say in Keller Williams, right? Or like if you're thinking about a Keller Williams Market Center. I love it. Cost of sales, expenses, marketing, company dollar,
$30. Yes. Production. I like
production,
production. What does
taxes.
production lead to? Yes.
Awesome. Um, yeah, so I love
Your credit
yeah,
card money.
income
I love
journey,
that. Great,
income.
great, Paul. Yes.
Yes, I
All
love
right,
it.
Herb. Well, then, what are the factors that we're going to be talking about today in
Yeah,
regards to
so
profit?
so the like I said, this was a pop quiz. The answer that I was looking for, and by the way, this is kind of a trick question because there's a lot of things that impact profit, as some of you illustrated just in your responses in the chat. And the 3 main things, if I was to put it into 3 buckets, it would be your income, your expenses, and then at Keller Williams, in terms of a market center, we look at like our other income, right? And so we're gonna touch on some of these things in our different strategies today. And the first thing that we wanted to talk about is the very first thing you could do in your business to maximize your profit for the coming year is to educate yourself. And one of the things that we would ask you to focus on is specifically your expenses and your revenue, right? And we hear a lot of times when we talk about doing a deep dive, doing an audit in your business, we're typically looking at expenses, right? Some of y'all have heard that. Yeah. And yet that is important, and we're going to talk about that. And we also want you to do an audit of your revenue. Does that make sense? So here are the first action items that we wrote down specifically on this educate portion. And that is, do we actually know where our dollars are going? Right? And whether you're an agent or a market center, you could look at either your bank statements if you don't have a P&L. If you're a market center, you have a P&L because that's required, and you could talk to your MCA about transmittal, and they'll be able to share with you what your P&L looks like. And what we want you to do is, and you've probably heard this action item before, right? But highlight anything, any item that surprises you or anything that you're not sure what it's for, right? Has anybody done this exercise, by the way? I see a couple people raising their hand.
Right.
Uh,
How often? So if you do this regular practice, how often do you do it? Do you have a time block in your calendar where this time exists? Monthly, biannually, once a month, 15th
I
of the
love it.
month. I love the specificity of that one, Jessica. Great job. Yep.
Awesome. So for those of you who are doing it regularly like that, either come off chat or sorry, come off mute or type it in the chat. What do you learn by doing it that frequently?
One of our friends that shared that they do it monthly. Who wants to come on and share? What do you learn when you do this monthly?
We do the credit card statements for a monthly, because I have to do that. I have to do like a deep dive, and then I have to make an Excel spreadsheet and everything. You kind of realize what some people don't know what's even signed up on their card, so you have to ask them, and if they don't know, then I usually just go around and just start canceling, and then see if it was something important. But I mean, at one point we had like 10 different Adobe PDF subscriptions that we didn't even know who they were linked to, and they were linked to some people that weren't even at the market center anymore.
Yes.
Yeah, I love that, Dominic. One thing that I heard you say that I think is so important is that we tend to have these different subscriptions, and the larger our organization gets, the more of those subscriptions we end up finding. And sometimes we can have multiples of them and we didn't even realize it, right? So I love that. I see Katie's got her hand raised. Katie, what do you got for us?
Yeah, hi, thanks. We do this activity monthly, and there's always something to discuss or adjust. And the question we're usually asking with each of the items is this something that we should just cancel and eliminate? Or is it something that we could get for less? Or is it something that we should keep doing and try to get more out of it? And all of those, kind of bringing that to your ops team or to the key leaders in your organization with those questions, it just brings up a lot of opportunity to think of like, okay, do we get rid of it? Or the fourth one is double down. Do we want to spend more on this? Because it's actually producing such a great return, and getting everyone's feedback and input on that can be really, just really useful on a monthly basis.
I love
And
that.
I'd love to be able to add something too, if at all possible.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I would say to that main point, I think what we get from it is less cutting down on our expenses per se, and where to reallocate money to. To her point earlier, we have been flabbergasted by how little we spend on certain things, that there's a lot more runway to what the prior speaker was speaking about, that are really impactful for the business. And so for us, that's been the biggest thing. Is we'll go through a year where my business partner and I will sit down in typically August to plan out our following year. So this year, August 2023, to plan out our 2024. And it's amazing how we have so much more extra money that can go towards some of the events that we do within our group that are big lead generation sources, that we're leaving on the sidelines doing stuff that's really not as impactful. So for me, it's reallocation of our resources. Granted, cutting expenses, that's a great point, but it's really a reallocation thing is what we use it for mostly.
I love that, Jordan. And I love that. So you and I forget the gal that was speaking
Katie.
earlier. Yes,
Katie.
Katie.
Thank
You
you.
two, you queued up our next action step. So thank you. It's like you had my notes. Um, awesome. So I love that. So if this is something that you've never done before, right? And I know we've got a lot of people here who do, and they do it regularly, which is awesome. If this is something you've never done before, what do you think you'll be surprised to learn? Right? You can type that in the chat. You can think about that. The biggest thing I would encourage you on is if you have never done it before, that's okay, right? What one thing that often keeps people from doing it is a fear of, oh, it's going to look terrible. I already know it's going to look terrible, right? And what I would say is lean into that, right? You can't change anything until you're aware of what needs to change. So if you've never done this before, right? I promise you, you're gonna, once you go through the exercise, just like people are putting in the chat, um, it's simpler than it feels, except for Elise said it was pretty terrible. I promise it gets better, right? We can't change it until we're aware of it.
Yes. So something else to think about is what you just said, Herb, is we can't change what we don't know about. And so through this whole conversation for the rest of the half hour is going to be, what do we need to learn? What do we need to know? What can we add? Where do we need to bring awareness to the financials in our business? That's how you maximize profit. So the next slide we have in educating ourselves is revenue.
Yeah.
Is how many of you can just raise your hand or put in the chat, yes, is do we know what is driving revenue on our business? And if we're looking at ourselves as agents, it is if you were to sit down and review the entire transaction list from your 2023 is what source generated that lead? Where did that come from? Was it your database? Was it farming? Was it a newsletter? What generated that? How many of you track your lead sources per closing? Yeah, great.
Yeah. See a lot of people raising hands.
All right. And then from a so we're going to cover both from a market center leadership perspective and an agent perspective. So if you're a market center leader on here, we have a new report called a new agent productivity. Same thing. Also, if you're an agent growing your downline, knowing where new agents come from is also a lead source. And so as market center leaders, we like to look at where are new agents coming from? New agents to the industry or seasoned agents joining Keller Williams. Anything you'd add here, Herb?
Yeah, I would say if you are an agent, and this is great because I see MCAs on the call and they're going to hate me for a minute. Yeah, if you're an agent and let's say, I don't know, something happened and you didn't keep a list of all the transactions you had, right? You can go to your MCA and ask them, right? Hey, can you run a report of all the transactions I've had with my office? There is also a MyKW report. If you go into MyKW, click on reports, you can actually pull all of your transactions that way. So in case you're wondering, hey, I haven't been keeping track of that list. Those are two places you can go. And please be nice to your MCAs if you are going to go to that person and ask them that question, because we've got a lot of people on this call. If all of you had the same MCA, that'd be a lot of people asking one person to run all this reports. So have some patience with them if you're going to do that. All right. So yeah. So we talked about auditing our expenses, and just like the two individuals mentioned earlier, Jordan and Katie, we also want to audit our revenue, right? Where are those sources of business coming from, so that we can either choose to double down on that, right? Or if we had something that we were playing red light, green light with, we can choose to maybe back off of that. All right. So the next thing we're going to look at is examine, right? So now that we've got a little bit more clarity on where our dollars are going, where our revenue's coming from, we're going to take a look at where are we getting the highest return from our money and our time, right? One of the things that we often talk about when we talk about audits like this is we review our dollars. We don't necessarily look at what our time is being spent on and the return on investment that is creating. So Jenny, what are we doing for our money?
So for our money, we are asking, where are your dollars generating profit for you? Where is your money working for you? instead of you having to work for your money. So as we look through our financials, you're reviewing the highlighted items. Maybe they're surprises. Maybe you don't know what it is. Or maybe it's like, you know what? I don't know why I really still am paying for this. Let's identify what our return on investment is. So ROI is, what are the return on investment for those items? How often are you asking yourself, what is this expense and or investment making for me? So minimum return on investment should be really 3 to 1. And so what's your minimum return? So when we're looking at, oh, I just had a weird pop-up. I'm not speaking Spanish. So I don't know how to make it go away. I've never seen this before. I apologize. So what is your return? What's your minimum ROI for an expense? If you sign up for a new subscription, what's your expectation of profit that expense will generate? Does anybody have one that 4 times? I see. Anybody else? So the reason why we said 3 to 1 as a minimum is a third ideally is set aside for taxes. We do encourage paying our taxes. 1/3 for the expense of the investment, and then 1/3 is the profit. So what is your minimum ROI? There's a great book, 10x, right? The 10x rule. Everybody's gonna be different.
I see Jose has got his hand up. What do you got for us, Jose?
Yeah, I was just wondering if you could give an example of a 3 to 1, just so I can kind of get understand that a little bit better.
Yeah. Do you want to take that, Herb?
Yeah. So again, just sort of arbitrary numbers here, but let's say you were investing $100 into, marketing, right? Maybe it was print marketing. You would want, using this standard, you would want at least $300 in return in terms of revenue from that. Does that make sense? So that would be an example of how you would measure what the return on investment is. Now, like Jenny's saying, we're challenging you all to identify your minimum standard, right? This minimum here is to say, if anything's getting you less than 3 to 1, it probably is really costing you because you're going to pay taxes on that, like she's saying, right? And then obviously you invested the dollars into it. So if you're getting less than a 3 to 1, it's probably costing you, and you may need to redirect those dollars somewhere else. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I just want to kind of mirror that back. So what you're saying is if you invest 100, you'd want to at least make 400. So you'd cover your initial investment, $100 profit, and $100 to cover the cost. Is that correct?
Yep.
Yep.
So same thing with like leads. Let's say you pay a lead source $1,000 a month. For that lead source, how much GCI would you want that lead source to create for you to then have a return on investment? $1,000 of GCI is not making you any money. It's just covering the flat expense of that. And so it's 3 to 1. What I agree with Amy being that's really your break-even point. And so what is your number? And maybe that's hard to quantify some of the expenses. And yet if it's something intended to create dollars or income for you, are you holding those dollars accountable? And are you tracking it to know what you want to hold it accountable to? So action item number 3 is set an evaluation and a drop date for underperforming items. When is this on your calendar to examine these? If it's once a year, 3 times a year, quarterly, monthly, is how will you know when it's underperforming?
I love that. And I do want to touch on part of that too, because that is a big question we get of what about, I hired this person for leverage. They're not necessarily, directly involved in the revenue generating actions, right? Or maybe it's, you paid for some technology, or you've got a subscription that, again, it's creating leverage for you. It may not be directly driving revenue. What I would say is, in those cases, right? So this is really just to create a different perspective on looking at it. What you've essentially done is saying, I'm gonna pay and invest in leverage over here so that my ROI on my time or this other person's time can be higher. If that's what you're going to do, get clear on what that expected return is, right? Maybe you've taken that one individual's salary and said, okay, now I'm expecting a 4-to-1 return, right? Or the other thing you could do is combine the total cost of whatever the leverage piece was that you invested in and the original person or function that you were investing dollars into, combine that and evaluate the return on investment on that total amount. Does that make sense?
Yes. All right, so we're going to move into the next slide because we're going to hit this on time, right?
Yes.
Time is money. Time is money for all of us. So how do you spend your day? How do you spend each day? Do you analyze where you spend your time? So the action items here is review your calendar. If you don't currently follow a calendar, track down where you spend your time. Maybe it's time on task, or you track it by every half hour. And if you already follow your calendar, then you can ask yourself am I actually spending my day this way? And be honest with yourself. We're not here to judge you. Yet you can ask that question of yourself and answer it. And then highlight the activity with the highest dollar per hour return. So when you're lead generating, is that your highest dollar per hour activity that you could be doing? Is that the same if you're running a team? Is that the same for every person on your team? Right? It may be different based on the role. And so how are you helping others analyze their time on task or highest dollar per hour on your team or other people in your world? And so asking yourself is, what will these habits get me to my goal for 2024? So if you're looking at your calendar, what habits have you created? What patterns show up in your time? And is there ROI for your time on that task? Will those get you to your goal for 2024? There's somewhere that you need to double down in your time or back time away.
By the way, so we got that question a lot in the chat of how do you evaluate the ROI on your time? One way you could do that is calculate what your dollar per hour is, right? And so the way that you calculate that is you take whatever the amount is that you earned either in the current year or that you're projecting to earn, and then divide that by 52, which is the number of weeks in the year. And once you have that, divide that by the number of hours that you intend to work in that week or weekly, right? That would get you your dollar per hour. And what we often do is we do that based on what we're currently making. And yet every single one of you, I would imagine, has a goal for what you intend to make this year, right? Or for 2024, right? So what you might choose to do instead is take your goal for your annual income and use that in your dollar per hour exercise and evaluate the things that you're spending your time on based on that. Are those things going to be able to create that ROI for you as opposed to what you're currently making? Does that make sense?
I have a question.
Yeah,
Yeah.
go ahead.
Would you do 52 weeks or would you do 48? Because you know how they talk about you got to take time off for vacation and all of that. Do we calculate that or should we keep it 52 in order to get the base number? Does
Yeah,
that make
that's a great
sense?
question. Yeah, do you have any thoughts on that, Jenny?
I would, my personal opinion is I would figure out where does my time need to go for 48 weeks. So that way I can take time off. If you don't want to work during, maybe you have leverage that can work on lead generation for you over the holiday season and you want to take time off or you want to take time to travel, whatever that might be, is I want to know how I need to spend my time the rest of the year to be able to maximize the time off. Right? So I would absolutely go with the shorter amount of time to maximize my activities. Yep.
I love that. Yeah,
So one of the
I'm
questions I
okay with
wrote
that.
down to be able to ask this one is, as a coach, we spend a lot of time where we spend our time and helping clients manage their calendars and finding their ROIs is if you're not sure where your time's going is, what's it costing you by not knowing? If you're not sure where your time's going, how do you know what it's costing you? and allowing that to empower you to start tracking your time. Where could your time be going to support your goals? All right, next slide.
Awesome. And I did see people asking about that to repeat the dollar per hour exercise. I went ahead and put it in the chat. So if you didn't get a chance to write that down, go ahead and grab it from the chat really quick. Awesome. So while y'all are writing that down, who wants to come off mute or put in the chat? What is the current method of lead gen that is creating the highest return? Does anybody know that in their business? I know we've got a couple people evaluating that stuff regularly. Who wants to share? Expireds. Love that.
Yes.
Awesome. Who else? Client events in the chat, sphere of influence, prospecting, repeat referrals, open houses. Okay, I love it. So on this call today, you all have heard from others who are sharing, right? The specific thing that's generating a high return on investment for their time. So if you do this exercise and you're questioning, hey, I'm spending time on this, I'm not actually seeing a high return on investment for this time, you may choose to pull from some of the other things that people are sharing on this call because it's working for them. Why not for you? All right. We are running close. We're going to jam with these next couple of slides. So the last thing that we wanted to touch on is energize. So you've done your educate, you've done your examine. Now we're going to energize. How do we put some of these things into action? So
Yes.
Jenny, tell us about habits.
Yeah. So habits. What habits are you creating? If you look at your calendar, what habits are being created through your calendar and your time blocks? So that's where we're going to start is we have to go small to go big. And so break down your goals into daily activities. So if your one big goal is to close 100 transactions, is break that down into how many transactions per month and then per week. And then we have our economic model that will help us break down into how many hours in lead generation based on your conversion rates, how many hours you have to spend in lead generation. And you want to make sure that you're spending the right time with the right activities. And so tracking, maybe it's open houses, maybe it's door knocking, what activity creates the largest amount of leads for you? And so looking at habits is identify the habits of people who are achieving what you intend to achieve, right? Are you studying people? If you're an agent doing 5 to 10 units per year and you want to get to where you're doing 25, 30 units per year, is who's an agent in your market center in your area that is already achieving that? What questions can you go ask them? If you ask them as, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Finish your thought.
No, go ahead.
Okay.
It escaped.
I think this is a big one. And I just wanted to key in on it, right? Because we may hear from lots of people around us about how challenging the market is, how difficult things are. And yet the reality is, doesn't it make sense that next year, there are going to be people who grow their business? Yes or yes? Just like we see there's going to be people who we see their business decline. And so the question is, who do you want to emulate? Right? Is there somebody out there? Yeah, Adam, yes, and yes. Yeah, there are going to be people who grow their business next year. Will it be you? Right? So who are you choosing to emulate and focus on following that model? Right? There's going to be lots of other examples of models that don't work. And so my recommendation would be don't follow those.
Yeah. Ask questions, interrogate the reality, make sure that you're following or asking the right person the right questions. So one of the other things to remind you of is the MREA energy plan. If you've ever heard the MREA energy plan, raise your hand, put a quick yes in the chat. So we're going to hit this. Our energy is huge. And what we do to manage our mindset, I was going to say, going to copy and paste this here. No. All right. So here is, I'm putting it in the chat. Are the parts of the MREA energy plan is meditate, pray. That's the spiritual being, exercise and eat. There's your physical, hug, kiss, laugh is the emotional filler, plan and calendar is the mental, and lead generate is what creates business. So where did those things fit into your calendar? Are they calendared? What's it costing you by not being in your calendar? Is there one that needs a little bit more attention in 2024 than in 2023? Have you moved into the next part that you're ready to add in one of these? What will it look like when you have all six, 7? There you go. All right. So
All
what
right,
do
we're
you,
gonna
yeah, there you go. We'll
yeah.
go to this one based on time. Is communicate, is who are you communicating your goals and your actuals with? Obviously, we're here as MAPS coaches. If you have a MAPS coach, they are your partner in your business. Ask them to ask you these questions to help support you. If you don't have a coach, now's a great time to invest in one. If you have a team, if you have a director of ops, maybe it's a spouse or a partner at home, who's helping you? Who's asking you? And who are you communicating it with? Share the vision and expectations with your team. Does your team know your 2024 goals? Do they know how they can contribute to those goals? Engage in partnerships with vendors and other key relationships. So even as agents, do you have vendor partners? Right? How do you help fill your vendor partners' needs, and how do they help benefit your business each year? And then share goals and commitments with your coach. We nailed that one off the top. So going from entrepreneurial to purposeful is, who are you modeling? Is it time to change it up? And the action you take from this call is going to separate you from other business owners. There's 220 of you on this call right now. What action are you going to take from this call? Based on that is, who does this require you to become? We're just not going to fall into it. Rarely does that happen. It does happen. Yet, what version of you gets to be grown to achieve your goals in 2024? What does your thinking need to be to support a more profitable 2024? How do you intentionally think about your lead sources or your expenses to create more profit? We've given you lots of different action items to where to start. Starts with a time block. Pull out your statements, go through and ask lots of interrogating questions. The only person there first to that conversation is you. Be honest with yourself.
All right. So
What
I
action
know
will you take?
I love it. And Jeremy already shared he's going to review his P&L with his business partner monthly. Yeah, I think that's a great perspective, right? Not knowing, we can't afford not to know where our money is going, right? So I love that, Jeremy. Way to take action on that. Lisa's going to evaluate her calendar. Thursdays at 3 p.m., another review P&L. Yep, love that.
Yes.
Yeah. And by the way, if you're an agent on this call, you're not quite sure how to, you'd love to review a P&L, but you don't have one, or you're not quite sure how to get started on that. Feel free to reach out to your MCA, ask for help. And we'll go ahead and put our information in the chat as well, in case you'd like to reach out to either of us. But I love this. I love the action items y'all are sharing. At the end of the day, this call could have been super entertaining, but if we don't take action, then it didn't mean anything, right? So whatever that action item is, write that down, take action on it today, or take some sort of action on it today to get started. Even if that's just adding it to your calendar, like some of you mentioned, calendaring to review your P&L.
Yep. And if you're out on vacation or holiday the rest of the year, open up your calendar right now. Go set it for January 8th. Make an appointment with yourself for January 8th to review P&L, print bank statements, print credit card statements. Credit card companies are automatically going to send you your summaries for the year for your spending. Make that your thing that you do on January 8th to kick back off the year. Okay? All right. We appreciate all of you for attending today's session. Please join us for some of our other MAPS holiday sessions. The recording for this will be posted within 24 to 48 hours on the YouTube channel. And I stuck my email in the chat. It's jennieschlipp@kw.com. If you have any questions or we can do anything to support you, please let us know. The best way that you can support us is go take action with this in your business. We want to see more profitability for our agents and our market centers in 2024 because we know it's possible. Any closing words, Herb?
Nope. Make it a great day. Go take action, and we'll see y'all on the next call.
Happy holidays.